Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're bringing you a review from a game that was just released at Essen in November. This one's called Keyper. It's from Richard Breeze. This is a very historic series. I think there's over a dozen of these key series games right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of these things, and in fact, the player boards, I'm not going to lift this one up right now, but one of the player boards actually has the history of all of the key games on it, which is kind of cool.
In very small writing, because it's so huge.
Yes.
It carries a lot of the lineages from the other Key series. If you've played any of the Key series games, Keyflower, Cathedral, Key to City London, all those games have the same basic core concept to them. You're taking your keepers, or keeples in this case, and you're placing them onto a board, around a tile, whatever it may be. The same thing holds here. You're acquiring tiles, you're acquiring buildings, you're flipping them over, upgrading them. All those things are very similar. However, they've done something a little bit different, and we're going to walk you through what that difference is. But first, let's talk about all these massive amount of components that you see.
If you haven't been able to tell, there's just a few components on our table here. In fact, I don't know that I've seen this many animal meeples in any one other game ever.
There's 8 of them.
There's 8 different animal meeples, and there's a different meeple for each single one, painted differently. You've got raw materials, you've got finished goods, you've got wheat, you've got crystal gems. I mean, the components are all over the place. There's player boards. The artwork on this is beautiful too. The player boards have great artwork. There's a crazy amount of tiles. Each player is going to start with
14 different tiles.
Yeah, and then there's, what, 60 or so, 70 tiles more?
There's 90 tiles total.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, and all of them are completely different, at least the ones that you can acquire later on within the game.
And best for last, it comes with these are the...
Those are country boards.
Country boards. These are going to be out in the middle of the table where you're going to be going, acquiring resources, doing different things, but this will not do it justice, but this thing flips infinitely for different sort of configurations that will come into play throughout the game. We'll explain. But I don't know what the engineering is behind this, but I could sit here and do this all day.
Exactly.
For sure.
So you're going to start with an X number of country boards, or the things that David was just flipping around, in the center of the table, according to the number of players.
Right.
So we have a 3-player game set up, so there's going to be 3 of these set up. Now, the way that they're set up, in the bottom corner of each of these boards, or somewhere on the board, there is going to be a tower.
Right.
With a keeple that's outlined in black and it's white in the center. You're always going to set that up for a very specific way, because there's 4 rounds in this game, just like the other Key series games that start in the spring, they go to the summer, the fall, and then the winter, and you're going to set these up for the spring. Through the course of the game, you're going to be setting these up on new faces depending upon what season it is at that time.
Right.
Each player is also going to start with a player board. This player board is broken up into a couple different regions. On the far left, you have your farm. That's the green area. You're going to have a number of tiles that that also correlate to your farm. These are the places you're going to place your animals and your livestock. In the center of the board, you have your country area. This is where you're going to build your buildings and the different tiles that have brown backgrounds to them. These are going to score you victory points as well through the course of the game. In the light green area, these are the fairs. At the end of every single one of the 4 seasons, you have the possibility of scoring some secret objectives depending on what's on the back side of those fair tiles.
Right, you're going to get one of each of the first 3 seasons at the beginning of the game randomly. And this is going to basically serve, like Jeremy said, end of the season, there's going to be something that you could accomplish if you happen to have these goods. You're not going to have to hand these goods in. You just have to prove that you have them, and you'll be able to score some points.
And on the far right, that's where you're going to house all of your different types of resources. As David said, you had raw materials. You have wheat. Wheat's kind of like a wild type of material that you can use for anything. You have your finished materials, and then you have your gems. Those come in different kind of colors. Those gems are going to correlate to very specific tiles that can give you victory points at the end of the game. And then you have some boat tiles. Again, if you're familiar with Key series, we're going to say this a lot. Boats are used in this game as well. You can go to very specific regions on these country boards to be able to get bonuses from the boats that may be used for that particular round. In any given round, there's going to be 4 boats. There's 6 boat tiles. So every round is going to be a different set of 4. You may see some of the same ones again, and you may not.
Yeah, they kind of serve as a bit of a market each round. When you go to those tiles, you're going to choose one of the 4, put it out there, and it usually allows you to either acquire certain resources or goods or animals, or sell those same things at a certain rate.
Talking a little bit more about your player board, at the very top, you have your scoring track. You'll place 2 discs on there at 0 points. You'll be tracking your own scoring through the course of the game. You have a little keeple tower. This is where any extra Keeples will be placed, or Keeples
Yeah,
will
the
be
Keeples.
placed. These will give you bonuses at the start of the round, depending if you have over an X number of Keeples in your particular player board. Now, every player at the start of the game will start with 8 Keeples. You're going to start with 2 white ones and then 1 of each of the other 6 colors in the game. And then you're going to start with a Keyper. This Keyper looks a little bit different. This is going to be your main guy. It's going to designate also the player color that you're playing with.
Yeah, exactly. The Keyper, the big difference between the Keyper and the Keeples is the Keyper is going to go on those designated spaces on the country tiles.
Yep.
That are going to play a significant role in how the round-around action works.
And your Keeples are the guys that will go onto the country board standing up or onto any of the tiles that you've built. These will be able to enact those specific abilities and allow you to take actions through the course of the game. So to set up a game, you're basically going to roll out 8 spring tiles. These are things that can be purchased through the course of the game. You're going to set these up, as we said, to the spring sides, put all of them in the center of the board, depending upon the number of players. And then you're going to get your Keeples ready, and then you're going to pick a first player.
Yeah, so on your turn, you're going to do one of a few different things, and they're very simple. The Keyper is one of them, and we'll get to that in a moment because it plays a significant role. But the main thing you're going to be doing is placing these Keeples out onto the country tiles or on your own board to take an action. On the country boards, you're going to place in any one of the spots, you're going to take those resources or use that action on that spot. Here's what you need to know though. If you use the color that corresponds to the border around that, you're going to get take that action or take that resource twice. But before you do any of that, you look to your left and ask the player to your left, do you want to join?
Right, and so that player has the option to join you with the same color Meeple that they used previously. Or they can use one of their whites because the whites are wild in the game. When they join you, only one player at the table can join you. So at most, there can only be 2 Keeples of the same color on any given tile. So what that does, if nobody takes that action and no one follows them, if David did not place the same color around there, he gets to take that action once. If he's the only one to place there, but he placed the correct color there, he gets to take that action twice. If someone followed him with the same color or a wild, both of those players get to take that action 3 times.
Right.
That's the cool portion about the game, because as you make decisions through the course of the game, you have to be fearful of people following you and using that same action, and possibly to a greater benefit depending upon what they're doing at that particular time.
Well, and plus, it's very alluring when someone goes to a space and you know that you can join them to get 3, when on your turn you might take the same action. If no one joins you, you might get as little as 1, maybe 2 on this. So you're going to be weighing that constantly as people take their turns, and it kind of keeps players engaged for sure, turn to turn. You're not really waiting around for your turn.
And there's all kinds of different types of tiles. There's ones that give you wheat, raw materials, conversions, and whatnot. One of the very interesting portions about this game too is that if no one follows him, say I chose not to place a green guy, he would get 2. On my turn, I get that same action. I can do whatever I want. But I could go to the same spot that someone else has gone to and take that action by myself because I'm the only player that placed there and that board is already locked up.
But he gets the joining benefit.
Yes.
So my Keeple,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to say that, my Keeple is going to help him, but I don't get any benefit. So that is a bit of a nasty little thing you can do on your turn, wait around and sort of take those spots.
One of the other interesting things is at the start of the game, everyone starts with 8 Keeples, but through the course of the game, you may get more or less. We'll talk about that in a moment. There may be a time, though, on your turn when you don't have any to place. A round's not going to end until everybody has placed all of their Keeples. What you will be doing on this action, instead of placing a Keeple, you're not out of the round, which is really cool about this game.
Right.
You have the option of laying down Keeples, and you can lay them down first on the country board that you've acquired. We'll get into that in a moment. However, when you lay down a Keeple, you get to take the action of that spot as well.
Exactly. There can only be 2 Keeples in any one space, and they can only each ever work twice in that space. When you laid them down, that signifies that they've taken their second action in that space.
So if I didn't have any Keeples on my player board and I needed to take an action, I could lay these guys down and then take 3 sheep as well.
Exactly.
So that's one of the cool aspects about running out of Keeples early. Now, one of the other options you can take on your turn is you can simply take your Keyper and place them on one of the 3 country boards. Why do you want to do that? It's because at the end of the round, when all the keeples have been placed, that player gets to take the player board upon which they, or the country board upon which they placed. So if I placed in this location, at the end of the round, I would take every single one of these keeples and then place them onto my player board.
Yeah, and the other benefit is, well, the biggest benefit is indeed getting all the keeples on there, so because you might be able to acquire more than you ever started with. But the next thing is you're going to take that board and with its magic engineering, flip it to whatever configuration you want for the next round. Following one guideline, it must show the icon for that season or the following round season face up on the board when you lay it back down.
We're not going to talk about all the different squares, especially not going to talk about how things upgrade and flip over, how you purchase and things like that. But there's two main components I want to talk about. One are the boats. If you take a boating action, you go to one of these boat locations with either a wild or any keeple you wish to use. But you're going to take one of the 4 available ones and lay it on that spot and then take the action of those.
Right.
So these, as we said, will rotate every single round. The other thing I want to talk about is when you go to one of the very specific spots that allows you to buy new tiles from off the player board, you don't immediately place that onto your board. You simply buy the tile and then you add it to your row of available buildings that you can then build. So you're going to be taking multiple actions in order to acquire it and then to build that specific tile.
Right, and one other thing I want to cover is the building, because getting these tiles onto your board can be done in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
One, there are some tiles that you will acquire once built that will allow you to build as well. Mm-hmm. There are country tiles that you can use that allow you to build. Again, if you put out here, though, you're risking that keeple being taken by someone else if they claim that country board. And then finally, you can actually take one of your keeples and just say, I'm building this tile, and place it down in the location. You've used that keeple. You've enacted a build action. You have to pay the resources for it. But that keeple's safe because he's on your player board and no one can mess or take with the keeples on your player board.
And when you build stuff, it typically will cost you a number of raw or finished materials. So you're going to be rotating those in and out by different things that you're doing. So around what, as we said, end once all the players at the table have placed all of their keeples, then what happens is that each player is going to reveal their spring or their summer, whichever season they're in, and announce to everybody if they've completed that objective. If they have, they simply flip it over and it stays there on their player board. They will get those points at the end of the game. If they did not complete it, it's simply thrown out of the game and they can no longer complete that. Now, there may be times in the game when you acquire multiple fair tiles. You can complete all of those in the season that you get them. However, you can't retroactively complete something. So say, for instance, we were in the fall and I hadn't completed my spring, but I completed it in the fall. You can't complete that tile. It's gone. You have to complete it that season.
Is over.
Exactly.
One other thing I wanted to point out about animals in your farm space. You can acquire animals all throughout the game and not have anything built in your farm. But at the end of a season, you need to have some things built, or those animals, they will wander off and they won't be staying on your player board. So if you have a bunch of horses, maybe you need a stable for your horses. Maybe you need a farmland that allows you to hold up to 4 different types of animals. Yeah. So you definitely need to do that in order to get those engines running with the animals.
Everyone's going to take their country board, they're going to flip it around, as David said. You're going to take all your keeples and lay them onto your player board here. Anything that you have that's more than 9 keeples will go onto your keeple tower. What the Keeple Tower does is anytime that you play your Keyper in a future round, you're going to color code all the different keeples that you've laid on here that were in excess, and it's either going to give you a random raw material or a particular type of animal. So it's another way to get resources if you're collecting a vast amount of keeples. Because you're only going to be able to place 9 of those max from round to round. So at the end of the game, what's going to happen is you're going to tally up all your points. Now, points are given directly by the tiles. So if you've played Key Series, again, all of these tiles will give you victory points. Fewer victory points if you haven't upgraded, more victory points if you have upgraded. And basically what these tiles will do will give you victory points for gems and resources and animals and connectivity to other like tiles within your player board.
Right, there's a few tiles in there that make the player board a little bit of a puzzle. You can place one down and then build adjacent to it or diagonally to it to score some points, things like that. But mostly, it's going to be a collection of resources on these various tiles.
Most points wins. Let's talk about the components in this game. Let's get into a review. Yeah. The components in this game are phenomenal. Like any of the Key series, Richard Breeze uses the same artist for majority of his games. They all have a very similar look to them. The components, though, as David said, there's 8 different types of Meeple animals in this, and they all look great. They're all different color coded. You have gems, you have all kinds of resources. The tiles look fantastic. They have great artwork on it. It looks really good.
I couldn't agree more. No one could knock this game on components by any means. I've never seen this many components on the table, or at least the variety of components that are on the table. And like Jeremy said, the artwork, I mean, I think it's our style.
Yeah,
we really like this artwork. It's playfully done, but not too childlike.
Yep.
It's very fresh, very colorful. Not to mention the fact these components themselves, those boards, are a new type of thing that I think we may end up seeing in future games from other people.
Those are phenomenal. And all the player boards look different. I don't know if you guys can see this on camera, but my farm man looks different than his and so forth. So all the player boards look completely different. Very cool. Gameplay. Now, if you've played Key Series again, this has a lot of familiar type things. The gameplay itself is very familiar. The way you approach the country boards is very, very different. In the other series, you're trying to lock up particular tiles by placing a majority. This game is a lot more about timing, making sure that you place at the right time.
Yeah, because mainly with the Keyper. If you play that Keyper early, here's what, at least in your first play, you're going to think, well, I'm not going to play my Keyper early because if I place it there, no one's going to go there. And that's true. You probably wouldn't want to play your Keyper on an empty country tile.
Yeah.
But at the right time, after a few people have played Keeples, if there's one tile that has a few Keeples that aren't yours, you may as well go place there and then just dump all of your Keeples there if you can, or do other actions that you can on your player board. Because at the end of that round, you're going to take a massive amount of Keeples. It's going to give you the benefit, a multifold benefit, and then the other players are going to be having to resort to laying down Meeples Keeples in the following round to take some resources.
Yeah, there's enough familiarity between this and the other series to have fun playing this game. Now, the one thing that David and I want to warn you guys about, the first time that you play this game, make sure that you are being very proactive in the way that you use your Keyper.
Yes.
Because the problem we had the very first game that we played, one player was able to collect a vast amount of the white Meeples, and they kept those for the rest of the game by simply locking up their particular board in the very first action they took of the game. And then they would just flood that board with their own type of Keeples. So when you play the game, make sure that you are very proactive in trying to collect the country boards and keeping the Meeples that you have, because there can be situations where one player could have 16, 17 Meeples and getting a vast amount of things from their tower, while the other players are scrounging to just follow the actions of the other players after them. And they may not be the best actions for them. Yes, they're still in the round, but they're taking actions that they probably don't want to take.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough either. In your first game, this is one of those games where if you're playing particularly with inexperienced players, you could play it that first round, and then those people, they may have listened to the rules, they may have gotten through the first round, but this is one of those rules where they'll go, oh, wait a minute, that's right, you're taking that country board?
Yeah.
I have all my Keeples on that country board.
Yeah.
And then they're left with very few, potentially. That's going to be a very disappointing situation.
Or they're left with all the same color.
Exactly.
Which is even as bad.
Yeah, you want to diversify, and above all, I think, you don't want to let go of all those wild Meeples. The white Meeples, if one player ends up with a majority of those, it could be problematic.
Having said that, once you know that going into the game and you've played the game once, you will understand that, and there's an immense amount of fun to have in this, especially with a huge amount of tiles. There's so much diversity in the way that you can approach scoring in this game. Again, very similar to the Key series. I've said that to death. There's a variety of ways in which you can score points. So that is Keyper from Richard Breeze. Brand new game, takes about 2 hours, plays 2 to 4. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Happy holidays to everybody, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.